I didn't say she was wrong. I said we have a story. It's just not a story they want to tell. Slavery is the story. Slavery is how the story begins. But it's not how the story ends. The story is about a country that 400 years ago brought people in boats as chattel slaves and kept them in a state of apartheid up until about 1970-ish. From the end of apartheid for Black people in the United States, i.e. Jim Crow, from that moment, 40 years later, we had a Black president. We went from back of the bus to hail to the chief in 40 years. By the way, I looked at that Third Way PDF. The Third Way Comeback Retreat last month, a bunch of moderates got together, and this is what they came up with. Here are the bullet points. Number 1, overemphasis on identity politics. Many working class voters for Democrats prioritize niche identity-based groups with overbroad unifying messages, making them feel excluded rather than included. It's because we haven't been able to explain to people that we're talking about the same thing. In 1741, there was a slave uprising. At this time, 1 in 5 New Yorkers was enslaved. About 200 people were indicted. Now, their star witness was a 16-year-old Irish indentured servant named Mary Burton. She was very reluctant to testify, but they threatened her with jail. But what she was originally testifying to had nothing to do with this so-called conspiracy. She was a witness about a robbery. Per her testimony, the robbery was actually done by 3 slaves. She also testified against the guy she was indentured to, accusing him of receiving stolen property. The guy she was indentured to, Mr. Houston, owned a tavern. Houston's Tavern was a place where working class white people and Black people, both free and enslaved, socialized together. And the authorities had been watching him for a long time. They wanted to shut him down because us getting together and drinking together, that was not something that they wanted to continue. It made the elite very uncomfortable. So they had been trying to catch him in something. They'd been watching his tavern, like staking it out, but they couldn't pin anything on him. Enter Mary Burton, the 16-year-old kindly Irish indentured servant who was indentured to the guy who owned that tavern. The historical record shows that it looks like she was manipulated and coerced into testifying. And she had something to gain because A, she could avoid jail, and she could put the man who she's indentured to in jail, and she could be free from indenture. So she started testifying to this whole conspiracy plot, to burn down the city and unalive all the whites. So she named specifically 3 slaves, plus the guy she was indentured to and his wife. Because, if the husband goes to jail, then the term of indenture could still be owed to the wife. So both the husband and the wife have to go to jail for her to get out of that term of indenture. Are you seeing what's happening here? The people who were accused could not find counsel because no lawyers in New York would represent them, Black or white. So based on this very sketchy testimony, about 30 people were sentenced to death and a few were sentenced to be enslaved in the Caribbean. Her master, his wife, and his daughter were among those executed. So why am I talking about this? Moderate Democrats are accusing us of, focusing too much on race and not on class, not understanding that those two things are connected. Now, I'm not disagreeing that we have a messaging problem. Absolutely not. But what we're saying isn't incorrect. What our problem is that we're not connecting the two things. Before this country was even started, there were poor white people, poor free Black people, and slaves who understood that they had the same enemy, that they were in the same boat. The same person who was screwing with the poor whites was the same person who was screwing with the enslaved. The wealthy slave owners, the property capitalists, they saw that early on. And the powers that be almost immediately tamped that down. And this was one of the major events in colonial America that brought that home. And ever since, they've been triangulating Black people against working class white people so that we forget that we have the same struggle. Democrats focus too much on America's flaws, racism, sexism, inequality, without acknowledging the country's progress and potential, making them seem pessimistic and unpatriotic. Racism is a class struggle. It's a part of the class struggle that can't be separated from it because it's the foundation. Because every problem the working class has, you can trace it back to racism, slavery, etc. Racism is the biggest, strongest weapon that the capitalists have in this class warfare we're in. US imperialism, capitalism, these systems could not exist without it. The reason we're failing isn't because we're talking about this too much. The reason we're failing is that we're not talking about it in the right way. We're not talking about it enough, and we're failing to connect the class struggle with the institutionalized racism. When we say the working class in the United States, we mean white people. Newsflash, 40% of the American working class is not white. Also, in the data, there's no real evidence that working class white people are any more racist than any other white people. This book was published in 2019, Merge, Fusing Race and Class, Winning Elections and Saving America. And after a bunch of surveys, polling, and focus groups, the researchers found that a message that was just about race or just about class was ineffective against the racist dog whistles on the right. It could only beat the racist dog whistles when you combined them. Economic justice can't happen without racial solidarity. You can't separate the two. You have to make the connection. Dividing us and triangulating us against each other with race is to distract us from focusing on the massive wealth inequality and political oligarchy. We can't address the racial injustice without addressing the economic injustice. But to get the economic justice, we need racial solidarity. It's both. You have to talk about both.